Okay, hello and welcome everyone. So this video is going to be following chapter 13 in the OpenStax Principles of Microeconomics text. So it's on positive externalities and then public goods. You can get the OpenStax text here. So you go to openstax.org, go to subjects, business, economics, and then you can download the text. Here's the macro version, here's the combined version. If you click through to get this book, I recommend the PDF rather than just view online. View online is fine, it's searchable and maybe clickable, but there's no page numbers. So the PDF will have page numbers. You could also find my microeconomicprinciples.substack.com free Substack text. And I've got a article on, chapter on externalities. This will have actually positive and negative externalities combined. And then this is another video I've got on externalities and deadweight loss graphs. And then I've got a separate chapter on public goods. That's the other kind of topic of this one here. All right, so what we want to talk about is public goods and positive externalities. The chapters are going to be, or the sections are going to be investment in innovation, how governments can encourage innovation, and then public goods. All right, so here we have our view from Voyager. Launched by NASA in 1977, Voyager 1's primary mission was to get detailed images of Jupiter, Saturn, and other moons, and their moons. In August of 2012, it entered interstellar space, the first human-made object to do so. It's expected to send data and images back to Earth until 2025. Oh, that's like now. So I wonder if it'll make it past that. We will see. All right. Market competition can provide an incentive for discovering new technology because a firm can earn higher profits by finding a way to produce products more cheaply and by creating products with characteristics customers want. Right? So there's rewards to innovation, but innovation is costly. Right? Research and development is costly. In some cases, competition can discourage new technology, especially when other firms can quickly copy an idea, right? Because R&D is really costly. So why would you develop and build your lab and make all these investments in a better technology that your rival is just going to copy for free? That's bad. Studies by economists have found the original inventor receives 1/2 to 1/3 or 1/3 to 1/2 of the total economic benefit from innovations. Other businesses and new product users receive the rest. Well, new product users, that's going to be consumer surplus as part of the economic benefit. So we're not so worried about that. These other businesses, well, who knows? Maybe they're directly opportunistic and they're kind of stealing the invention, but it could be that there's other businesses that improve it and then actually widen the size of the economic pie to begin with. So hard to know exactly what to make of that figure. All right, so positive externalities and new technology. So we have private benefits. Those are going to be the benefits to private individuals, to our market participants. And then we have external benefits. The external benefits are going to be the spillovers to bystanders. Jointly, the sum of private benefits and external benefits is social benefits. So social benefits is the value of all positive externalities of the new idea or product, whether enjoyed by companies or by the society as a whole, as well as private benefits from the firm that developed the new technology. Well, look, yeah, in the context of technology, this is true. This is a good application. I mean, their slide here is just like applying new technology or positive externalities to new technology, although this is a generic definition, right? Social benefit is always private benefit plus external benefit. We're thinking of society as the original decision makers plus bystanders. Remember, for there to be an externality, there has to be bystanders. So it just can't be like you create this thing and there's all these unintended consequences, most of them positive, so you say there's a positive externality. No, for there to be a positive externality, there's got to be bystanders that are going to get those spillover benefits that they basically haven't paid for, is the idea. Positive externalities or benefits are the beneficial spillovers to a third party or parties, basically to bystanders. All right, so here we have big drug faces a cost of borrowing of 8%. Here's their quantity of financial capital. Here's the rate of return. This is the private demand curve. This is the social demand curve. If the firm only receives their private benefits of investing in R&D, then we show its demand curve for financial capital by D-private, and then the equilibrium occurs at 30 million. This is the supply curve. It's going to be horizontal at 8% is the rate of return. Sure enough, we get Our intersection here will get 30 million. Okay. Because there's spillover benefits though, the true benefit, actually the positive externality, we can't even see the graph right here. If you connected this right here, the positive externality, the additional spillovers would be measured by the distance from here vertically to wherever this crosses the graph, which is huge right here, small right here. This is non-constant. Anyway, so because there's spillover benefits, society would find it optimal to have 52 million of investments. Okay, so where does this graph cross the supply curve? Way out here. So that's another, 22 million of investment. All right. If the firm could keep the social benefits of the investment for itself, the demand curve for financial capital would be desocial, and it would be willing to borrow 52 million because it would capture all those additional returns, but it doesn't. So instead, what it's going to do is it's going to pay attention to the demand curve, its demand curve that captures only its own private benefits, because the spillover benefits to bystanders are not realized. They're not captured by the investing firm in this example. They're also difficult to quantify, and they're not salient, and so they're not even really paying attention to them. Unless there's a way to compensate, or unless there's a way for the company to fully enjoy total benefits, it'll borrow less than the socially optimal level of 52 million. Yeah, right. We get underproduction, under provision of whatever is the good that creates the positive externality. Why invest in human capital? The investment in education or human capital requires a certain upfront cost with an uncertain future benefit. The idea is that higher levels of educational attainment will eventually serve to increase the person's future productivity and subsequent ability to earn. Economists have found through several studies the rate of return of college education to the person in the U.S. is approximately 10 to 15%. Private rates of return, the estimated rates of return go primarily to the individual, for example, earning interest on a savings account. Okay, right, that's true. That's a good example of private rates of return. In the context of this example, right, the context of investing in human capital, the idea is like, hey, look, the individual student invests in their own education, their time, their money, their resources, and they get a rate of return that, this seems low, 10 to 15%, I think is higher than that, but fine, this is the number they're going to use. That's going to be the rate of return maybe that the person themselves captures. And then there's additional spillover benefits to bystanders, right? So having a more productive workforce, having a more productive taxpayer base, all these things benefit society, broadly speaking, but that creates external benefits, and you're not paying attention to that when you're deciding like how many years of school to go, how many degrees to get. You're only paying attention to your own individual aspirations, as you should, right? All right, so society gains when people learn. Society also gains from investing in the education of another student. The social rate of return to schooling is also positive. There's better health outcomes for the population, lower crime, cleaner environment, more stable democratic government. The social rate of return, when estimated rates of return go primarily to society. That's a silly definition. Why are they saying it this way? The private rate of return is going to be the rate of return on the investment to the private individual, to the decision maker themselves. And the social rate of return is going to be inclusive of the spillover to bystanders. It's going to be like the total benefit to society. All right. Positive externalities response. The appropriate public policy response to a positive externality, like a new technology, is to help the party creating the positive externality receive a greater share of the social benefits. Yeah, that's right. You can bring forward some of those benefits by subsidizing. So we have subsidized education in many states in the U.S. In-state tuition is subsidized up to, say, 120 credits. Beyond a certain point, you pay the same as a student out of state. But the idea is, well, the state benefits from that investment on having a more educated workforce. All right, market for flu shots with spillover benefits, positive externality. So here is our market demand, our marginal private benefit. Here's our societal demand curve, our marginal social benefit. Here's our supply curve, our marginal private cost. We don't have an additional social cost curve because we're not considering a negative externality. So the private marginal cost and the social marginal cost are effectively the same. This is like the marginal private cost. We didn't bother to draw a marginal social cost, but for our purposes, we'll just treat it as the same. All right, so we have a marginal private benefit. The smaller demand curve is to the individual themselves. And then the spillover benefit adds on. The vertical height here is the size of the externality. So that's this right here. well, they make the subsidy equal to that, and then this is the social marginal benefit curve. The idea is if this is the positive externality, this distance, you make the subsidy equal to that positive externality, and then the decision makers will behave as though this is their true demand curve. So they'll get a higher level, in this case, of flu vaccines. The equilibrium quantity of flu shots as produced in the market is where marginal private benefit equals marginal private cost. That's Q market, and the price of flu shots is price market. Okay. Market demand curve does not reflect the positive externality, right? It's missing that bystander effect. So only Q market will be exchanged, right? This outcome is inefficient because the marginal social benefit exceeds marginal social cost. Yep, anytime, this is like dead weight loss right here. So anytime the marginal social benefit is greater than the marginal social cost, wait, the dead weight loss is like right here. Yeah, so marginal social benefit greater than marginal social cost, like right here. So the problem is the marginal social benefit is greater than the marginal social cost, and so there's additional like wealth creating or like welfare creating gains through, in this case, increasing the quantity. I don't know. This graph probably we would want maybe we want the social demand curve to have a much more steeper slope. Like maybe it should actually share the same horizontal intercept, and then so that it looks like a V rather than being perfectly horizontal. And what that convention would do is it would capture the idea that you need to have bystanders for there to be a positive externality. And if you vaccinated everybody, there wouldn't be any bystanders. So what I'm talking about is like maybe the first one is the private benefit curve. So the MPB is right here. And maybe you should draw MSB like this. The idea being, well, this is pretty steep. The idea being like, this is the horizontal axis right here, the vertical axis, I didn't bother to draw that. The idea is as we increase the total quantity of people getting shots, eventually there's no bystanders. So if there's smaller and smaller numbers of bystanders, the positive externality shrinks, right? There's a massive spillover effect when there's lots of bystanders, but when there's fewer bystanders, then there's no externality, is the idea. Okay. So if the government provides a subsidy to customers of flu shots equal to MSB minus MPB, the level of vaccinations can increase to the socially optimal quantity right here. Yeah, so the idea is if you set the, look, what this is doing, MSB minus MPB, that's just the size of the externality. The easier way to say this is like, as best as possible, if the government can estimate the positive externality to bystanders and then set the subsidy to capture that and bring forward that benefit to consumers, then they have that subsidy. They feel like it's part of their internal marginal benefit when they make the decision to get the flu shot, so then they will, is the idea. Okay. All right, how different government policies can increase incentives to innovate. So guaranteeing intellectual property rights, government assistance with the cost of research and development, and then cooperative research ventures between universities and companies. All right, so government policies, can change the incentive structure so that there's more investment in research and development, which creates more positive externalities, spillovers as technology improves. Intellectual property rights, so IP, is the body of law including patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secret law that protect the right of inventors to produce and sell their innovations. So patents give the inventor an exclusive legal right to make, use, or sell the invention for a limited time. In the US, there's two different types of patents. One is like 14 years and the other is like 20 years. I think it's like I forget. It's like product and process, whatever. So, and then there's copyright laws. This gives the author an exclusive legal right over works of literature, music, film, and pictures. I think copyright laws for like books and music is something like 75 years in the US. Here's a graph that shows patents filed and granted 1990 to 2020. So we have all these patents filed, that's increasing, and then we have the patents granted increasing as well. Number of applications increased substantially from the mid-1990s into the first years of 2000s, partly due to the invention of the internet. This has led to many other inventions, but also made it easier to copy, steal, or pirate intellectual property, which led to the 1998 Copyright Term Extension Act. Well, right. I mean, the other thing is like internet facilitated information and access to information, which allowed people to make more rapid progress and then have more inventions. If the private sector does not have sufficient incentive to carry out R&D, one possibility is for the government to fund such work directly Okay. Government spending can provide direct financial support for R&D conducted at colleges and universities, like National Science Foundation grants is a really big one. Nonprofit research entities also getting like NSF and NIH grants, and some others, sometimes by private firms and then government-run laboratories, right? Complementary approach is to give firms a reduction in taxes depending on how much R&D they do. Federal government refers to this policy as research and experimentation, R&E tax credit. Studies find that each dollar of foregone tax revenue through R&E tax credit causes firms to invest at least $1 or more in R&D. So this kind of cheapens the cost of expanding or incentivizing R&D. If you cut taxes by $1, but firms invest more than $1, that's a win for government. State and federal governments support research in a variety of ways through partnerships and grants for innovative projects. Examples: NIH, National Academy of Sciences, and the Agricultural and Food Research Initiative. Cooperation between government-funded universities, academies, and private sector can spur product innovation and create whole new industries. Yeah, I mean, this is all good. This is all right. I don't know that it has too much to do with public goods or positive externalities, but fine. Public good. Public goods are those goods that are non-rival and non-excludable. Non-excludable means it's not possible to limit to paying customers, right? You can't exclude someone from using the good, so therefore you can't charge for it. Non-rival means when one person uses the good, there's still just as much remaining for everybody else. So let's see, they give the examples of fire and police service and national defense. National defense is plausibly a public good, non-rival and non-excludable. Everybody within the country's borders and sometimes beyond benefit from national defense. It is non-rival in the sense that one person's protection doesn't diminish how much remains for everybody else. It's non-excludable in the sense of like you can't limit only to people who've paid taxes who gets the benefit from national defense. And so, yeah, national defense is a pretty good example of a public good. Sometimes also we might talk about a street light or something as a public good. Fire and police service, maybe. I mean, the issue is like there's a congestion externality. And so there's only so many fire trucks. There's only so many fire stations, right? And if they have too many calls, all of a sudden there's scarcity, right? And then what do we lose? Oh, then it becomes rival instead of non-rival. Same thing with police service. And so, yeah, under certain conditions, fire and police service could be a public good. I think it's more natural to think of them as rival and non-excludable. Rival and non-excludable is a common resource, subject to the tragedy of the commons. Okay, so free rider problem. A free rider is those who want others to pay for the public good and then plan to use the good themselves. Okay, if many people act as free riders, the public good may never be provided. Free rider problem can be expressed in similar terms as the prisoner's dilemma. I kind of see what they're going at here. Look, so a free rider is basically, that's a situation where somebody is able to consume generally a public good or a non-excludable good without having paid for it. And the reason why there's a free rider problem, is because if not enough people pay, then there's not enough funding to produce the public good that generates this positive externality spillover in the first place. And so it's an issue. Yeah, you can think of it kind of like the prisoner's dilemma, but it's not a prisoner's dilemma. Prisoner's dilemma is a very specific game in strategic, strategic situation. We need game theory for. Prisoner's dilemma is a particular 2x2 game, generally specified as a matrix, where both players have a dominant strategy. That means they have a single strategy that's always the best response. And when both players play their non-dominant strategy, social payoffs are the highest, which means it's a social dilemma because individual incentives driven by your dominant strategy conflict with group incentives, which is when everybody benefits when you play your non-dominant strategy. Free rider problem, yeah, there is a social dilemma in some sense where individual incentives are towards consuming without paying for, but group incentives are towards everybody paying for it. And so it's a little bit like a prisoner's dilemma, but it's probably not how I would describe it. All right, so the key to paying for public goods is to assure everyone will make a contribution and to prevent free riders. So this is done through government spending and taxes, or third-party provision, just generally speaking. In some cases, markets can produce public goods. there's an indirect way to charge for it. So radio is a public good, but revenue is made by selling advertising, charging listeners by taking up some of their time. I I don't know about that. I mean, look, yeah, in some sense, we could say broadcast radio or even the internet, like even like YouTube, right, is non-rival and non-excludable in the sense of like anybody that has a device that can access those, broadcasts, however it's over the electromagnetic spectrum or whether it's over the internet, is able to access it. So it's non-excludable, and it's non-rival, subject to like bandwidth and like interference conditions. Fine. Generally speaking, I don't know if I'd think of radio as a public good, because I like to think of charging listeners by taking up their time listening to advertisements as making that like excludable, right? You're paying for it in some sense. And then I like to think of radio as more like a club good. Club good is a good that's excludable but non-rival. I don't know. Social pressures and personal appeals can also reduce the number of free riders and collect resources for the public good. Fine. Advances in public health have been all closely linked to positive externalities and public goods. Well, okay. So, I mean, the most important thing for public health has been sanitation. So, like having sewage and having clean water sources to drink. That's been the most important thing. And yeah, you can think of the utility as, the utility, you'd think of it as a natural monopoly. But what are they going to say here? Rise in life expectancy seems to stem from three primary factors related to public health and public good, or public health programs and goods. Public sanitation systems, yep, that's the most important. Providing clean water and disposing of human waste, yep, that was a big problem for a long time to prevent transmission of disease. Actually, like stop it, no longer having human waste like in the streets was largely responsible for changing life expectancy at birth from middle age to old age. Medical discoveries from government and university funded research, such as immunizations, antibiotics, high blood pressure reducers. Okay. Changes in public behavior through government health campaigns. So hand washing, food storage protection, reducing tobacco smoking. All right. So I see what they're trying to say. I won't. And that's the end of the lecture anyways. All right, yeah, so we could say these things are public. In some sense, there's positive externalities, yeah. So if you have an immunized population, then that protects others. And so there's a spillover effect, positive externality on bystanders. For antibiotics, this creates, so it's a bad environment for bacteria. And if enough people are on antibiotics, then diseases don't spread like as rapidly or whatever, and maybe they stop with the current host is the idea. And then that creates spillover effects for everyone else. Overuse of antibiotics creates a massive negative externality. High blood pressure reducers, I don't know that I'd call this there's a positive externality. There's definitely a benefit for the individual. Hand washing definitely creates a positive externality. So you're not spreading germs everywhere. Food storage and protection. I guess if we're talking about commercial food in the house, it wouldn't be a positive externality. It would just be a private benefit. Reducing tobacco smokers. Sure. You could think of pollution abatement and of like secondhand smoke abatement as a positive externality, or you could think of pollution or secondhand smoke as a negative externality. So sure. Yeah, we could say there's a positive externality there. I don't know. Let's see. Specifically public goods, I'm not sure that I would consider many of these public goods. This is just a really big missed opportunity because there's so much more to say with public goods and different types of goods and common resources and club goods, but they don't go into it in the text here. I do in mine. So if you want to learn more about private goods and public goods and tragedy of the commons and so on and so forth, you can find that on my Substack. So microeconomicprinciples.substack.com. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.